We begin with President Biden just a short time ago honoring 9 public safety officers with the Medal of Valor for their bravery and heroic actions, including 2 police officers who gave their lives in the line of duty here in New York City. Wilbur Mora and Jason Rivera, detectives were ambushed while responding to a domestic violence call last January. 22-year-old Rivera died that day. He left behind his childhood sweetheart and wife and did not live to see the birth of his child. 27-year-old Mora was shot in the head that day. He had a bullet lodged in his brain. He was on life support and died days later. House lawmakers also passed a new resolution on Monday that memorialized police officers killed in the line of duty and expressed condolences to their loved ones. And while that House resolution was approved with near unanimous support from both sides, 2 progressive congresswomen voted against honoring those fallen officers. Democratic squad members Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush were the only 2 lawmakers to vote nay. Kevin, I had the honor at the Blue Lives Matter NYC Gala to be present and help give out the Archangel Awards to the families of those fallen officers. And my question is, shouldn't support for law enforcement, and isn't support for law enforcement, bipartisan? Why the dissent here?
The idea that after someone has fallen and given their life in service and left the family behind, that it wouldn't be bipartisan and 100% supported is alien to 99% of people in America. The most important thing to remember about this vote is they own that vote for the rest of their lives. They are wearing a badge of shame, in my view. It's outrageous that they wouldn't have supported, regardless of your politics or what party you're associated with or what you think about law enforcement. Once the life is lost, there's only one outcome. You have to honor it. Both of those people, in my view, have now tainted their brands and their personalities and their power as politicians forever. This has to remain on their records and should be shoved in their face in perpetuity. I'm outraged. I don't think they should even have their jobs anymore. This is insane. Who could ever not support a fallen first service, or police or fire or anybody that serves in the Army or Navy or military? I don't get it. I'm Irish Catholic. This is like, I know where they're going in the long run. That's how I feel about it.
And Kaylee, when Kevin mentions, that the alien concept to 99% of people, apparently, however, protection is not alien to everyone, because these same 2 dissenters here that I agree should bear that mark of shame forever. Cori Bush, for example, spent over $500,000 in campaign cash on her private security, including to her now husband, who's unlicensed. Rashida Tlaib is not immune as well. She enjoyed $12,000 worth of private security services. So apparently protection is only noble when it's out of uniform, when it's unlicensed, when it's for them.
Yeah, of course it is. Rules for thee, not for me. But when you make AOC more moderate than you, and you relegate yourself to the far, 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 far left, if we can even call it that, you've got something going on. You've got some issues. But it's not just these 2 individuals. I want to broaden this out and make it about Democrats more broadly, because here's what we've seen. Democrats say Republicans want to defund the police. Like, what a ludicrous thing to say. We all know that's not true. But it's your party, 2 Democrats, who voted against memorializing these officers. No Republicans joined you. And beyond that, there's another bill this week. D.C. put in this really radical bill to target police officers, according to their union, take away their due process rights as D.C. battles crime. Well, what happened? So it goes through the House, 14 Democrats vote to overturn D.C. Goes through the Senate, 9 Democrats join Republicans and vote to overturn these D.C. requirements. But guess who's not on board? Joe Biden, whose administrative policy on his website currently says we will not support congressional Republican efforts to overturn common sense police reforms. It wasn't just Republicans, Mr. President, it was people in your party too. So when you have a president who stands by police officers in word, and he had a beautiful ceremony today, my question is, where are your actions? Join with the bipartisan members of Congress who say, let's protect our officers, let's bring them back into the police force in D.C. and protect the city.
Harris, during your hour, you covered the current funeral of Ariana Preston, who was killed, now designated the line of duty so that her family can get those well-deserved benefits. And for someone, to Kaylee's point, like AOC, broadening this out, Women's lives matter. Black lives matter. Is it that if the black life is in a blue uniform, does it not matter? Is that why there have been crickets for the death of Ariana Preston or Officer Kenneth Kroon or so many more that gave their lives serving, but don't have the particular box checked that the left wants?
They're anesthetized by their own gutter politics. They literally are asleep at the switch. It's National Police Week. And I just had on a former LAPD lieutenant who cried on the Focus as he watched Ariana Preston's funeral, because he realized that her name would be among the names to be added to the wall in DC, and he just left that wall for the names just added 247 in the last year. He's tired of the onslaught of people dying for the rest of us and no respect from everybody. So I get it. I don't know, and I agree with Kaylee, I don't think this is left or right. I think it's gutter politics. These people have their own brand. You don't think that Tashib, who's had her own run-ins with the law, I mean, you can see it on YouTube, her being carted away and yelling and cussing at cops and everything as they pull her out from some, event that she was trying to get her point across. But when these women, Cori Bush and Rashida Tlaib, come forth, National Police Week, they're just oblivious to anything that's going on but their own gutter politics. And they know how effective their voices will be because they are truly stars in that party. If they were not, they would be quieted. They found a way to quiet Bernie Sanders, didn't they, when he tried to run? He didn't get on the ticket. So the left can do it. But you said something that really moved me. You said that I know where we're going. Kevin, can we not go there? Where are we going?
No, I was just saying long-term, in my view, those people are unelectable to any position of consequence because the majority of the population regardless of politics or gender, this is just so foreign. The idea that somebody gives up their life and you don't support them and their family afterwards, I don't, it's so foreign to me and to 99.9% of Americans.
So true.
They are unelectable. And I'll tell you, their brands are garbage to me. That's why I look
The President of the United States was told by generals not to leave Afghanistan the way he did. That's just another example.
Kara, to Kevin's point, they're unelectable. That's why this is such a travesty in part, because these people are being paid by all the people that they purport to represent and yet are such fringe representatives. And to this point about gutter politics, there's absolutely no logic. Just moments before Cori Bush defended that obscene amount of money that she paid on private security, she said, "What, do you want me to die?" Just moments after calling to defund the police, that oblivion in full display, because there's no rationale, there's no logic, and it's pure screaming hypocrisy to the detriment of the respect that these officers deserve.
And in particular, it's pretty rich coming from Cori Bush. You said she spent all that money on private security. She spent $62,000 on a security specialist that she later married for her campaign over in 2022. So she knows how important it is to have, frankly, good guys with guns protecting her. And clearly she married one, so it makes a difference. But I also think it's important when you look at people willing to bear the consequences of leftist ideology. So we are citizens. We're not subjects, as you sort of open with, yes, we are paying their salary. So we are citizens and we should be treated as such. We should be protected by the government. That's the first thing the government is supposed to do, is to ensure the protection of its citizens. So that's number one. But when you talk about ideology and leftism and the consequences of those gutter politics, you look at the rogue prosecutors and the Soros-funded DAs and whatnot. They have propagating soft on crime policies, and they're demoralizing police. In Chicago, Lori Lightfoot, she was voted out, and Brandon Johnson, who is an advocate of defunding support for the police, was voted in as well. How many bodies are going to have to pile up before this is over?
That's right. And just a reminder, again, the husband that she paid, he's unlicensed. The good guys with guns deserve respect, admiration, and their families, post-deaths in the line of duty, deserve all the condolences, prayers, and support from this country. You get it from here. Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.